about the basics of the brain hemorrhage and the role of decompressive craniectomy. That is the most commonly done surgery in neurosurgery. This is the place Columbia Asia Patiala where I work. So, intracranial hemorrhage is a collective term encompassing many different conditions characterized by the extravascular accumulation of blood within different intracranial spaces. So whenever we talk about brain hemorrhage, the question comes to any doctor's or patient's mind. The most common cause of brain hemorrhage is a traumatic brain hemorrhage. The other most common cause is spontaneous intracranial hemorrhage, which is called as SICH. So first of all, any patient presenting with brain hemorrhage has to be ruled out whether it is a spontaneous or traumatic, because the lines of the treatment, the investigations are a bit different in both type of hemorrhage. Sometimes the presentation is a mixed one. A patient comes with a trauma, history of trauma, and the patient is unconscious. But whenever the history is taken from the attendants, then they say the actual history of trauma is not there. So sometimes it is a spontaneous intracranial hemorrhage which leads to the trauma. So in the types, most commonly is there are types of extraaxial hemorrhage and intraaxial hemorrhage. So EDH, all of you know extradural hemorrhage, subdural hemorrhage, that SDH, subarachnoid hemorrhage, SAH, and in the intraaxial hemorrhage, which is most commonly seen in hypertensive, diabetic and old age patient, in the basal ganglia bleed, the lobar hemorrhage, the pontine, the cerebellar, and the IVH. So here in the picture A, you can see there is a biconvex extradural hematoma in left parietal region. In the second image, that is B, there is a big SDH with midline shift. So most of the time, it is a hyperdense picture which is seen in these type of hemorrhages. And the third picture, that is C, there is a lobar hemorrhage in the right parietal region with midline shift. So one thing is very clear, the plain CT scan is almost always the first imaging modality. So we should not waste time in getting MRI or contrast CT whenever a patient with there is a history of LOC, or there is a decreased level of consciousness, or there is a decreased GCS. So the time should not be wasted, because in brain we say time is brain. So the time once lost, the brain is lost, and then the patient is lost. Though the patient survives, but they are bedridden, and most of the time their survival time is also less than 6 months. In the CT, the acute blood is markedly hyperdense as compared to brain parenchyma. So this is the only way that we can differentiate between the acute and the chronic or the subacute. Then comes the role of CT angiography. CT angiography is increasingly used these days, but the role of CT angiography lies mainly in the patients who present with spontaneous intracranial hemorrhage, and the role of CT angio is nowhere in trauma. CT venogram can be used sometime whenever the diagnosis is in doubt or it is not clear. MRI is typically requested when an underlying abnormality is being solved, particularly when an underlying tumor is suspected. Any patient presents in the OPD with a history of chronic headache and there is sudden loss of, can be a seizure, or there is loss of consciousness, or the patient gives a history of focal paresis or facial nerve palsy or hemiparesis or hemiplegia. MRI of hemorrhage can pose some challenge in that the appearance of blood changes depending upon the sequence and the time since the hemorrhage. So again, I come to my point that CT, that is plain, that is NCCT, non-contrast CT head is the diagnosis of the choice, because CT is freely available, MRI is not freely available as CT. Cerebral angiography is usually performed when a vascular abnormality is suspected and the CT angiogram is either normal. So some points about EDH, that is the most common hemorrhage, type of common hemorrhage. So here you can see there is white colored skull, and then there is dura, then there is arachnoid membrane, and then there is a subarachnoid space, that is pia, and then there is the grey colored brain. Here you can see the skull. The underlying the skull there is dura, then there is arachnoid membrane, then subarachnoid space, then this whole is brain, and the black spaces, what you are seeing is the CSF spaces, the sulci and gyri. So the thing important is, if any patient comes with brain hemorrhage, we have to define the type of hemorrhage and the site of hemorrhage and the characteristic of that hemorrhage. So I'll not go into details about the spaces. So here you can see there is small left extradural hematoma in the picture A, and there is a large SDH with hyperdense and hypodense component along the right frontoparietal frontotemporal convexity in the image B. So why this brain hemorrhage is important? Why this topic is important? Because the brain hemorrhage can lead to death. The death occurs because of the shift that is done by the clot. As we know, the brain has a very limited space. So only a minimum amount of blood can cause these kind of shift, which can lead from subfalcine to transtentorial to ascending to descending herniations. So there are so many kinds of herniation because of brain hemorrhage. Again, here you can see there is a midline shift towards right side, and there is a, if you can see, there is a isodense to hypodense, but if you can see, it's very clearly different from the normal brain parenchyma, and there is a small hyperdense component. So most probably it is a subdural hematoma, and these type of hematomas are usually missed on old CT scans, which are single slice. So one should be very cautious. These type of CTs are reported online, so they are missed. The patient comes to the neurosurgeon and there is a hematoma, which is usually missed. So as you can see, there is a hyperdense component, and this is a isodense to hypodense component on the left side of the brain. And there is a big shift, it might be around more than 2 centimeter, with early hydrocephalus. The ventricles are dilated, so the shift is towards the right side. So I tell you very frankly, in these kind of hematomas, a single burr hole is required, and we discharge the patient very next day, sometime on the same day. And the results are like magic. The patient starts walking, his speech is regained, and it is a miracle surgery sometimes. Here again, it is an acute extradural hematoma. There is a subacute plus acute component, and it is totally subacute chronic component. So I already explained about the brain shifts which are caused due to the mass effect. So small thing about EDH, they are the most common hematomas in the young patients because the most commonly traumatized people are young, who are drivers. The results are very good. The surgery is very small. Even the patient are discharged after 24 to 48 hours, depending upon the pre-operative GCS. If the GCS is good and the hematoma is this size, the patient is discharged after 24 to 48 hours, and the results are very good. And there are no deficits post-op. Again, in the subdural hematoma, the crescent shaped convex hematoma on the left convexity. So the result of SDH depends upon the pre-op GCS. If the GCS is low, the results are not so good. If the GCS is good, then the results are very good. There are stages I already explained. Few lines about subarachnoid hemorrhage. The most common cause of subarachnoid hemorrhage is trauma. The second most common cause of subarachnoid hemorrhage is aneurysm. So any patient presenting with the worst headache of their life, which is radiating to neck, Sometimes the attendants of the patient gives a history that he is or she is a sufferer of chronic headache, but today the headache is like that she wants to die. And she is dying because the GCS is low, or the patient has suffered from a seizure, or there is any cranial nerve palsy that is a localizing sign. So without wasting any time, these patients should be sent for a simple CT scan which can show subarachnoid hemorrhage. So in this CT picture, there are all type of subarachnoid hemorrhage are seen. There are intrahemispheric fissure bleed. Most commonly it is a ACOM aneurysm. There is a bleed around the ambient cistern, parapontine cisterns. So this is a clear-cut picture of subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is also sometimes mixed with a trauma. The patient who is driving a bicycle or motorcycle are bring to our emergency with a history of trauma, but the picture is somewhat else. As the aneurysm was the presenting feature, and the patient has landed up in the emergency because of the aneurysm, not because of the trauma. So here you can compare with a normal scan and abnormal scan with the SAH. There is a bleed, there is an intrahemispheric fissure bleed, there is a bleed in the sylvian fissure, the ambient cistern. So it can be associated with hydrocephalus, infarctions, giant aneurysms and hematomas. So here you can see the multiple infarcts, these hypodense lesions. So here lies the role of decompressive cranectomy. So decompressive cranectomy is very useful for traumatic and non-traumatic brain hemorrhages. So large hematoma with subarachnoid hemorrhage. Few lines about this is the most common presentation in the clinics. The patient comes himself or herself. There is a mild weakness because of the bleed in the basal ganglia. There is a right side hemiparesis, and there cannot be a facial nerve palsy with mild component of aphasia. So these patients can be managed as OPD patient as well, or you can follow them for the next 72 hours as an IPD patient. Blood pressure needs to be controlled, sugar status needs to be controlled, and a re-CT scan is advised if there is a decrease in GCS or after 24 to 48 hours depending upon the condition of the patient. Any patient comes to you with this small hematoma can be a tragedy in next 24 to 48 hours, and they should be taken very seriously. They should not be sent back home, because the maximum time to expand a clot is within next 6 to 12 hours. So we sort a 6-hour scan whenever we are in doubt or there is decrease in GCS. Sometime the patient is in nearby hospital or nearby radiological center. The patient reports within first 30 minutes. This is the scan of that patient, and after 12 hours or 24 hours the picture is totally changed, and this hemorrhage has become of that size. There is, you can see, a visible midline shift, a big hematoma. So even this kind of hematomas are treated. A simple bone is removed like this. Hematomas are sometimes are not touched because it is a very deep hematoma, and the results are very promising. Lobar hemorrhage. This is a cerebellar hemorrhage with hydrocephalus. Even I tell you very frankly, the old CTs which are single slice sometimes misses cerebellar infarct and small cerebellar hemorrhage, but the hydrocephalus is visible. So one should not miss hydrocephalus. Any patient presenting with neck pain, early morning pain or decrease in GCS, the CT scan is normal, as the posterior fossa are not seen in those kind of CT scans which are old. So the diagnosis of small hemorrhage here or a small infarct which is leading to Pons and presenting as hydrocephalus. So thank you for your valuable time. I just want to share, I'll take your 1 minute. that the health literacy is need of the hour. So I want all of us should help all those patients who are health illiterate, even the patient who are graduates, postgraduates, have no knowledge about health. People are going to physiotherapists, massage centers, or small clinics with a very big syndromes in their head, in their abdomen, and in their body. So they should be taken care of. I have started a program that is called a health awareness program, that is Lok Jagrukta Lehar. In this program, I go to village every Sunday and I spend around 1 hour with the people of that village, and I train them. I make some volunteers. Sometimes I also give them diabetes and the machines, the equipment for the screening of the blood pressure and diabetes. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
So it has to be two-way communication. So